Yeah,
Just
just
like
like
the cloud would be smarter, yeah.
Okay, yeah. Okay,
I
cool.
don't think we'll have access
So-
to this afterwards.
Yeah, so it would be useful. Okay, so I think I'm going to start now then.
Are you sharing the screen? Sorry.
Good point. Oh, I am. Okay, so
It's a screen.
yeah, I'm sure Rajat will join soon. I sent the link. Actually, I'll just follow up with him when I actually send it.
Wait, are you recording yet?
I am, yeah.
Okay.
This is all being recorded.
Okay, so yeah, you've waited enough. Okay, so so today's workshop is on JavaScript obfuscation techniques. So
Wait, also check if people can hear you.
oh yeah, well I mean I saw the mic moving before, but yeah, when I stand out in the room, I mean I need people to have joined to check that, and no one's joined. But I mean you can see the mic moving up top. So
I'll check.
if I stand out here, is it still moving?
Not a lot.
Not really.
Yeah, just stay by the podium.
Okay, yeah, I'll just stay over here then.
Would be like when we buy the telegram.
Okay, so
The main frame, and then the competition.
I'm sure most people here know this already, but JavaScript is a language for website applications, right? It was created, I think, by Brendan Ike at Netscape, and yeah, it was made in like the mid-90s. And it's it was designed as an interpreted language, so it was, you know, you don't have to compile it to an executable. You can just run it directly from the script, and it's interpreted on the fly, which is great for development because you can make changes and see them immediately. But one problem with it is that your code is stored locally on whatever machine has the interpreter. So any client-side code will be stored on the client, which means that if you have a website, for example, with JavaScript, you know, on eBay, for example, if you're in a checkout, you don't want your code for the cart to be on the client side because then they'll be able to read all of the code and see everything. So, like encryption keys and all that stuff. So, some of that can be taken care of by putting it on the server. Like, you can
When do they send it?
put your most proprietary stuff, like your encryption keys and your you know, your banking information and a lot of that stuff you can do server side, but there are some things that have to be on the client end, and devs usually don't want all of the stuff that's seen on the client end to actually be visible to the client. So, you know, maybe they have a proprietary algorithm or some other secrets, like I said, encryption keys, or another common use is malware. Like website malware will use JavaScript obfuscation because they don't want you. First of all, they don't want to be detected by the antivirus, but secondly, they don't want to be reverse engineered. So all of these things look for obfuscation as a valuable method of protecting their stuff. So yeah, this in the previous slide probably should have been reversed, but yeah. So so what is obfuscation actually? So obfuscation is the process of obfuscation is the
It was every.
oh, okay. Obfuscation is the process of making code less readable intentionally. So this includes a couple different categories. Like for one thing, you could make it less human readable, but that's not always the best direction to go. Like for example, one thing we can look at later, there's a way in JavaScript to make your entire code just 3 characters. Like you can use a exclamation mark and then the 2 brackets, and you can write your entire program with just those 3 characters. And it would be a valid JavaScript program, but it's obviously completely unreadable for a human. But the thing is that a machine can read it, and you can deobfuscate that in about 3 seconds and recover the original code. So even though it's unreadable to a human, it's actually not effective obfuscation at all. Whereas there are some machine obfuscations where a human could look at it and in 2 seconds be like, oh, it's just doing this, whereas the machine has no idea how to undo it. So using a mix of both allows you to make it extremely difficult to do, because no automated tool can do it, and no human can do it either without studying it and spending a lot of time. And the whole point is to basically make it such a time investment that there's no point in reversing it. Oh, and one last thing is most JavaScript scripts that you'll encounter on public websites nowadays are obfuscated. It's just like the standard practice. So here's some useful links, and we're going to be playing around with all of these later on. So the top one is an automatic obfuscator. So we're going to mess around with that the most because we'll actually be able to show different obfuscation techniques in action. The second one is a deobfuscator, and it's not great, but that's just because like I said, it only undoes stuff that's super machine readable. So if it's not that readable to a machine, then it won't be perfect. But that shows you that obfuscation is effective, right? So some of these we would have to manually deobfuscate to get back to the original. The third link is what's called a beautifier. So that's basically, I mean, it's really just a glorified, I forgot the command shortcut, but in VS Code, like there's 3 keys you can hit and then it'll format your code. Yeah, that's basically all it does. It just puts everything on a new line and introduces tabs properly and stuff like that. But it's useful for manual deobfuscation because one of the techniques, actually a couple of them, involve condensing things on a 1 line of code and making it really ugly. And then the last link is JS console. So that's just like if you have a JavaScript console, but if you don't want to set it up or deal with DevTools in Chrome, it's just a quick, easy way to get a JavaScript console. So it's useful for manual deobfuscation if you want to run stuff and see what it does really quickly. So I'm actually going to open all of these links right now, just so I have them to play around with. Oh, I didn't mean to do that. Oops. Oh well. Okay. Let me,
The life of a Mac user.
yeah. That's right, yeah. We'll delete that also. Okay, so
This man has been prepared on a silver platter.
where was I then? I was on obfuscation techniques. So, okay, so the first obfuscation technique we'll talk about is, this is actually several techniques, but they weren't important enough to put on their own slide. But you can take a line of code and combine it with commas to put multiple lines into one. So one common example is like if you have a function that's supposed to return, I don't know, let's say you do like, let's say you call some functions and then you add their stuff together and then you want to return it, right? You can put your function calls, like you would say return, put your function calls, have your variables be equal or whatever, and then put commas at the end and then add them up and then return whatever you need as your last thing. And the way JavaScript works is the only thing that gets returned is the last thing after the last comma. So that way you can take like 20 lines and just put them into one by putting every other line before the commas. Another common thing is the second line, which is switching out period format for, I'm not sure what that's called, but it's like brackets with quotes in between. And so that's actually a really weird syntax that I don't think any other language has except for JavaScript. But, yes?
Okay, so that's for JSON.
Oh, okay.
So the reason JavaScript allows you to do that is because every object is technically also JSONable.
Got it.
And you're able to call certain attributes and certain properties using that. So it's kind of like, it's the exact same thing as using the dot, but sometimes a property will have a space.
Right.
And you need to use that format.
Got it. Well, basically what it looks like you're indexing an array, but you're indexing it with a string. But it's exactly the same as doing like, instead of doing dot print, you could do brackets and then quotes with a print inside. But the thing is that it lets you make strings, like you can concatenate them or, decrypt strings or do whatever with them and then pass them in with the brackets, and it's exactly the same as using the dot by default. So it allows you to do a lot of fancy things later on to hide your strings and hide the name of the functions that you're calling. Another common thing is just using the, again, I forgot the name for it, but it's basically the question mark and the colon instead of using an if statement. So the way that works is you put your conditional before the question mark, and then you put the true case between the two, and you put the false case at the end. And then depending on the conditional, it'll execute either one or the other. But it's a lot less easy to read at a glance than an if statement. And then the last thing is just replacing special characters and strings with their hex equivalent. So, for example, space is just OX20, so you could replace it with the /x20. You can also actually do that with normal characters as well, although depending on what techniques you're using, that may or may not be done. Because if you encrypt the strings anyway, there's no there's no reason to do that. Because this is the last one in particular is an example of something that's very easy to undo with a machine. And actually, out of these four, I would say the bottom one is the easiest to undo, and the second one is also very easy. And then, well, depending on, like, if you do this just by itself, it's very easy to undo, but if you do some of that string decryption stuff, then you can't undo it by itself. And then the other two are a little harder. This one is kind of easy to undo with a machine if you program it correctly and they're not nested. The first one is a lot more difficult because there's a lot of ways that it could be undone.
The second one, the third one's actually probably the easiest because it's just an if statement.
Yeah, I know, but there's like there's some interesting branching things that you can do. But yeah, it's not that difficult. It's probably the same caliber as the fourth one, but anyway. So the easiest thing that you can do, which is also the easiest thing to reverse, is just compacting everything on a one line, which obviously is very off-putting at a glance, but you can very easily machine reverse it with that beautifier that I showed earlier.
There's also a formatter just in DevTools.
Oh, okay. Yeah. Another thing you can do is you can convert numbers into expressions. So, for example, at the bottom, you could take 0, and then instead of just putting the 0, you could put this random hex expression where you add and multiply a bunch of different hex values. And so obviously that, at a glance, you have no idea what that means, but it's literally just the number 0. And so if you do that for every number in your code, then it's a pain to reverse. But again, it's easily machine reversible, but for a human looking at it, you'd have to manually copy-paste every single one of those and undo them and stuff. But that's one of the advantages of JS console. You can just copy-paste them over and do it that way. So another thing that you can do in JavaScript, and I find this is really common in a lot of malware, even though it's not even that difficult to undo, but they do this thing I call wrapper functions, which is basically where instead of just having a function with parameters and you return something or do whatever, you put, for some reason in JavaScript, you can, and actually I made a typo, that parenthesis at the beginning shouldn't be there, but you can make a variable equal to a function for some reason, and so, oh, and actually I made a second typo, there should be parentheses down here because you're returning the function call, but anyway, so you can make a function equal to a variable and then return the function call as your function. So the outer function, all it does is just call an inner function that does the thing that the outer one did. And since the outer one doesn't do anything else, you could just replace it with the top. But like it doesn't even make it that much harder to read. But this happens all the time in JavaScript malware.
It makes it so much harder to re-engineer, though.
That's true.
Because what happens is that you have the same wrapper function for wrapper functions, and you cascade it, so you can have the same wrapper function that actually gets called from multiple functions.
Yeah, I've seen that before. I'll get to that later on too with, might be even the next slide actually. No, it's not. Maybe 2 ahead. But yeah, you can also do something called auto, well, again, I'm calling auto run functions. So that's where you have the syntax where you put a parenthesis in front and at the end. And then you put parentheses again and you pass in the parameters. So here you have your function A, which takes in B and C, right? And so then this function actually is not accessible outside of these parentheses. It's got like a local scope and it only runs once. So B and C are automatically replaced with apple and banana. And so actually all this code does is just return apple and that's it. And the function can't be called again. But looking at it, it's got this like, especially when you have a nested function inside of it like that, it's like 10 or 15 lines just for one line of code basically. So then Something else that's common is replacing identifier names, which usually the way to do this is to just put an underscore and then put a random hex value. And so instead of naming your variable like secret password or something, you name it this, and then nobody knows what it means. And this is completely lossy, so you can't actually undo it. Machine or human, it's completely impossible to undo this unless you somehow leak your identifier name somewhere else in the code. But one of the first things these obfuscators will do is strip out all your comments. So unless you got a printout or something, it's pretty much guaranteed that your identifier names are gone. So this is what I was mentioning before. Aliases is, I think, what Mohammed was talking about before. So one common trick is to alias almost everything. So inside your function, for example, if you want to call a global, instead of calling the global directly, at the beginning of your function, you would make a new variable and just set it equal to the global, and then just use that for every other reference within your function. And you can also do that with functions. So you can make variables equal to function names, and then just call that function with parentheses throughout your entire function. And when you do that nested, like, for example, you could have multiple aliases to the same function. Or one other common trick is to do, like, for example, if you have a encryption routine, and then a decryptor function, you take in a string and an integer, right? An integer does some operation with the string to decrypt it. What you can do is you can have multiple wrapper functions, and each wrapper subtracts a different amount from the integer before doing it. But then they all call the same function at the end. So what you'd have to do to decrypt it is like replace every wrapper with the original function and make sure to copy over that minus whatever value for each wrapper function that's different. So it's like a lot of work. So another thing that is common is to put a string array at the top with a bunch of strings in it. So the simplest way to do this would just take all your strings, put them in order in an array at the top. But then you could randomize the order. That makes it harder. You could add a bunch of useless strings to the middle of it, which makes it harder. And then you could encrypt all the strings too, and then you have that decryption routine I was talking about. So now every string throughout the entire program, you have to go through that array, find the index of it, decrypt it, and then call the string before you can use it.
Sorry, I just have trauma because of this.
Really? Yeah.
Actually, all of this is trauma.
Yeah. So another thing is dead code. A lot of JavaScript obfuscation will add dead code. So this basically just means adding entire functions that do absolutely nothing. Commonly they'll do like, I've seen code before where it's like 100 lines and it boils down to an if statement where it's like, if A equals itself, then do whatever, and then it just returns nothing. And so like, the point is to make it complicated enough that it doesn't look like it does nothing, but it actually does do nothing, so you waste a whole bunch of time trying to reverse engineer code that's useless. And without anti-debugger checks, you could use a debugger to just run the function, and you'd realize pretty quickly that it doesn't do anything. But if you use anti-debugger checks in your code, then there's no way to run it without it crashing, so then you have to manually reverse engineer it, which wastes a lot of time. Another thing you can do is abusing parse int, which you can combine with that technique from earlier with the brackets, where you can basically hide array indices inside your string array. So for example, let's say you want to access, I don't know, index 3 of an array or something. You can actually put like a random string in the string array, decrypt it, and then it decrypts to the string 3, and then you could parse int to get the number 3, which you access in the array. And another thing you can do is you can use strings directly as indices. So for example, and I don't know if I'm using the right terminology for that, but like for example, you could have the curly brackets, and then inside you could have like a string colon value, and so then you could do like string colon string or string colon whatever, and then you pass in those strings when indexing it, and it'll get you the values as a result. It's kind of like a map. But yeah, it works exactly like an array in JavaScript, so you can index stuff that way also. Which means, again, you can decrypt the indexes before accessing them. Another thing you can do is object properties. So pretty much any variable in JavaScript is an object, and you can add properties at any time and modify them at any time. So another thing to do is you can, often they'll create properties on variables, usually for aliasing, where they'll make they'll make a property using that bracket thing of a random string, and then they'll alias it to a function from earlier or to like a variable from earlier or something. And so there's all kinds of things you can do when combining this with other techniques. So then a much more advanced technique then is control flow flattening. This is actually the term that that obfuscation site uses. I don't know why they call it flattening though, because it's kind of the opposite, but basically you introduce a bunch of like unnecessary switch statements or recursion in order to make the code hard to follow. So for example, if you just have a bunch of like print statements one by one, you could do a switch on a variable that increments, and then put them all out of order in the switch, and then it's like every time it equals this, do this, and then just increment it once. And so each line in the switch only runs one time, but you can't just read it going down. You have to actually, manually go through it and figure out which order it goes. So the whole point is just messing with the control flow so that you can't read it line by line. You have to manually follow it. And then I mentioned these earlier, but anti-debugging techniques. So there's ways to detect when developer tools are open. And so you can infinitely loop or just crash the browser outright. And so then again, this verifies that static analysis is the only way someone can look at it. And then I'm calling this the most evil technique because I actually found this in some malware I was analyzing a year ago. I'm sure Liz and Colin probably remember this. There was a program I was trying to reverse engineer that it had a function in it that it looked like it was dead code, but what it actually did is it, in JavaScript, you can print out the code of your function as text, and then what it did is it basically hashed the text of itself, and then if it didn't match what it was expecting, it would crash. Or I don't think it crashed, I think it just looped infinitely unless it did match. So because I had already started deobfuscating it, actually no, I don't think that's what it did. I think it used it as an encryption key for decrypting some of the other strings. So basically because I had already started deobfuscating it, I couldn't, like I had no idea what the original function looked like, so I lost the key basically by doing anything to it. Which is really fucked up because I spent like 4 or 5 hours working on it, and then I finally got to a point where I mostly understood everything, and then I realized the key was like lost because I'd done anything at all. And because I didn't make a copy at the beginning, there was like no way to get it back. So
Backups.
yes. And so I'm going to talk about deobfuscation techniques, and that is the first one, is always make a copy.
Oh, well, there it is.
Yeah. So before you do anything, make sure that you back up the original obfuscated version, especially if it uses itself as an encryption key, because otherwise you'll be fucked. I would also recommend using JavaScript beautifier just to do the auto formatting, or you could use VS Code, you could use whatever, but just format it automatically. Don't waste time tabbing and entering everything. So then I would recommend what's it called? Like remembering all the techniques we just went over. So not all of the code that you look at is useful. Some of it is, of course, but and your whole job is to figure out what is useful and what isn't. I would recommend starting by undoing the simpler techniques, and every time you undo something simple, then the more complicated techniques will be easier to recognize. So for example, like if you have a for loop and your for loop initially has, it has that number converted to an expression, it has the control flow flattening, and it has some string obfuscation or something. If number expression, then you can see, oh, it's actually for I equals 0 less than blah blah blah, and so then that's easy to recognize, and you realize, okay, it's going until here, and then maybe you can do the strings next, and then lastly you can do the control flow flattening once you have the other two undone. And a lot of the simpler ones you can automate with JS console also. So now it's time for a demo. I'm going to actually show some of the techniques. So there's no ad blocker on here. That sucks. Anyway, so this is
That picture.
Yeah, it was pretty funny.
You when I look at JavaScript.
Mohammed, is this what your brain was thinking while I was doing the slide?
Yeah.
Yeah.
I was trying to reverse engineer the what is it called? You know that the website to like apply for jobs.
Mm-hmm.
I wanted to reverse engineer it so I can apply for jobs through
Through there, yeah.
AI.
Yeah.
Yeah. I did get like halfway through.
Okay.
Yeah, it's annoying.
So here's all the default options on here. I'm gonna actually start with everything turned off, and then I'll manually turn things on one by one so we can see what they all do. So see, I think I disabled everything. So this is just our default code here. It's basically a hello world, except that it puts it inside a function and then runs the function instead of just putting it plain. But if I click obfuscate, you can see even with everything disabled here, it still does the technique where it converts the dot into the brackets, and then it also adds a hex value instead of a space. But everything else it doesn't do, so it's still fairly easy to read for a human. But now we can start adding techniques. So I think, what do I want to start with?
JavaScript minifier.
I can show off compact, although I'm probably going to have compact off most of the time, but you can see what it does. It just puts everything on one line.
That's what minifier does also.
But I want to show what most of these other techniques look like, and it would be hard to see if I have compact on the whole time, so I'll leave it off for now. Let's see. Yeah, I could do numbers to expressions, but there's no numbers in here. Okay, so let me do, just for example, let me do string array, which we mentioned before. So if I add a string array and I obfuscate it,
Oh my god.
so it already got a lot more complicated. You can see the string array at the bottom. So hello world, for some reason it didn't actually encrypt the strings in the array, so you can recognize which one is real pretty quickly. But the rest of this code, assuming you reverse engineered it, it would basically iterate through the array, pushing and shifting until hello world was the only one left, and then it would
It's just complicated JavaScript code.
yeah, and then it would return it.
Isn't that hot?
Yeah.
That's so hot right
But you can see the original function here is still unchanged, and you can also see you can see it. It actually did some. It did some other techniques too. Like I mentioned, auto run functions, and you can see the parenthesis here. Like no, the scroll wheel is not great. Yeah, here you go. You can see like this function auto runs with the values it passes in here. And you can also see an example of.
Clicky keys on this? Are you kidding me?
You can also see an example of returning a function inside of a function. Like this one here is 7043.
Oh.
It creates a variable with the same name inside itself, which it sets to a function, and then it returns that function. And it does basically nothing else except set up an alias, which we also talked about. So there's already like 10 techniques involved in here, and I've only enabled one thing. So something else we can do. Okay, let's try some dead code injection. So now it
I saw some parsing.
it actually didn't do all that much. It's mostly the same code as it was before. Oh, this is only 0.4, so let me try to up that.
As the B movie. Calculate the B movie hash. Just spit it out.
Hasn't changed that much. That's interesting. Okay, one other thing we can do is try upping up the string array threshold and seeing if that changes. I think it just makes the array longer. Yeah. Okay. So something else we can do. Let's try control flow flattening, and I'll put that on max as well. And one other thing I'm going to start doing is putting this into the beautifier, just so we can actually see. We can read the code back. Oh, oops. I'll put it in the beautifier, so this way we can actually see. Yeah, we can actually see the code better, how many lines it is. So it's still not that complicated yet.
Way back.
So
Yeah, I would
Mine,
not want
mine
to
is kind of like
here, if I enable compact and simplify, well, not compact, but if I enable simplify, what does simplify change? I think simplify was some of those other techniques I mentioned before about putting multiple lines in one with a comma and stuff like that. You can also see here, I didn't talk about this in the slides, but that just means true. This is what I mentioned before, where you can use exclamation points and brackets to do basically anything in JavaScript, but here specifically it's
True.
yeah, because it's an array, and then you're saying, or an empty array, and then you're saying the opposite of that is false, and then the opposite of that is true.
Oh my god, I get it. What the hell?
Yeah,
It's so
it's
weird.
weird because then you could just do plus, and sometimes it gives you undefined, but like sometimes it will give you object.
Oh my
So
god.
once you get into like the object, you're able to use the words of object
Mhm.
to construct other things,
Yeah.
and slowly from there you get to construct an entire program using it.
No
Yeah,
wonder so
Javas-
many people hate JavaScript.
JavaScript is a nightmare. It actually
I
is.
love it.
Okay, so if I enable self-defending, I think this one is where it does that evil. Oh yeah, here we go.
What the hell?
Because like I was trying to reverse engineer Nike's website.
Here, let me undo compact. But
What did you do?
It was fun. And then I just used Puppeteer.
this is annoying.
We should do
It's
this for
annoying.
our scripts.
Should
I
we?
wanted to, but like the problem is,
Yeah,
they don't allow it.
How can they check the code?
Well, they're gonna have access to the.
yeah, the library.
Let me see. You know what's weird? It doesn't seem to be.
Check the links.
What if we just do everything at C and don't give them the binary?
Like I'm not noticing it.
How do I use it?
They wouldn't. They wouldn't.
Go
allow it.
what-
Well,
you have to
the
go call
JavaScript is
iPhone.
gonna be binary, right? But what I'm gonna do is that I'm gonna like they'll be able to download the binaries and.
Oh, yeah, there we go.
Okay, what the hell?
Because the first
So this is with like
one is
every technique enabled and on high.
automatically asks you to put in an
Interesting.
So I'll run the beautifier just to. Yeah, here we
It's a
go.
little bit-
So
So I wonder if we might actually.
you can see. Oh, you can see an example of one technique. I was talking about this before. This is where you have multiple aliases of the same function. So all of these are 172D, but you can see how they subtract a different integer from the one parameter. Another technique I didn't talk about in the slides, but you can see employed here also. These functions take in 5 parameters, but they only use 2 of them. And
God.
which of the 2 that they use is different for each one. So for example, this
That's
one,
fucked.
the first one is the last one, and the second one is the second to last one. Whereas in this one, the first one is the middle one, and then the second one is the fourth one. So like, there's no way to automatically undo that. You have to manually
This is
look through each
gross.
one.
This one's gross.
Yeah.
Whatever that was. Disgusting.
So you would have to manually, first of all, manually delete every single one of these and reverse them to be in the correct order. And then once you did that, you would have to manually add this offset to everything before you could replace this with this for every use of it. You can also see the string array is in play again, and this time it is encrypted, so there is no hello world in it anymore.
Are you sure? I think you should look closer.
Oh really? Wait,
No,
do you
no,
see
I'm
it?
kidding.
Oh, okay.
The joke is that it's way too long to look through.
You can see, this is an example of the array as map thing I was talking about. So you can have like, in this right now, this is an object with properties. And so it's basically setting each of the properties. And so you can access each of these with a dot or with the bracket. So this property is equal to a function. This property is also, actually, well no, this one's equal to a value because it's the result of running this. Whereas this one's a function again. Like, yeah, it gets really complicated. And actually, most of the code all the way down is just properties of this one object, which goes on quite a bit. This must be like over 1,000 lines.
Just a few lines.
You know, yeah.
At least, sure.
There's also some other techniques with exception handling, so like a try and a catch, where it
What is
intentionally,
catching?
well, it intentionally does something that doesn't work, and then it catches it. Well, here it's not actually utilizing that, but so it probably needs to try. But there are some examples where it intentionally uses the catch to run code and stuff like that. Okay, so let's take this code and put it into our automatic deobfuscator and see if
It does not.
how much of a job it does. Oh, it has a specific deobfuscator for
Did they
that
know who
site.
did it?
That was very pretty.
Did they put some kind of tag in there? They know it?
Look at that, it's still.
I see
It's-
a lot of.
It's a lot shorter.
Wait, it turned one of them into debugger.
Yeah.
It turned the string into an actual thing.
Yeah, it did get a lot of the strings back, but even still, it's not perfect. Like,
Oh, I mean, it's still JavaScript. I can't read it. Yeah, that's normal.
Console.log hello world.
where do you see it? Oh yeah, it got that back. It did get that back. You're right.
Got that hello world.
But stuff like you know, techniques where auto runs functions and stuff like that, it didn't undo that.
It just
It didn't.
empty parentheses runs the function.
When you run the password changer, it changes all the passwords. But then
It didn't undo all of the useless code either. Although some of the stuff down here, I'm sure, is anti-debugging techniques and stuff like that.
and then yeah,
What
next
happens
thing
if
you
you
run
run
it,
the deobfuscator twice?
I mean, it uses
deobfuscator
both.
twice.
I don't think it's gonna do anything else. But I mean, I can try.
I wouldn't. Yeah, I wouldn't.
Yeah, it's just the same.
I just have
One thing that's interesting as well, I'm curious to try it. Oh yeah, it is over 1,000 lines. I'm curious to try it in here, without using the obfuscate IO one specifically. I'm curious if this one can do it itself.
No.
Yeah.
There's one thing. There's one option you didn't click. The hex thing at the bottom.
Yeah, that's just renaming these automatic ones. Like that wouldn't really do much at all.
Okay, never mind.
Still though, it knocked out like 2/3 of the code. But yeah, it wasn't able to do everything. I'm curious what the difference is on the back end between these two that makes this one more effective.
But I
But
know how they did that. Just aliens.
anyway, so still though, this, assuming it didn't break anything, would be an easier starting point if you wanted to manually deobfuscate this. And then, you know, JS console is just what it is. Like, for example, you could take,
Wait, show like the not colon things.
oh yeah, I can show that. So
It's true.
it is true.
You could do array plus array.
Oh wait, I think I've seen these.
That gives you a string.
I've seen some
Wait,
of these.
do not array plus yeah, that gives you false. But not array plus not array. Gives you 0.
Where'd the zero come from?
It's because false plus false, they get converted to zeros because of the plus.
This is like the what's it called? The bash scripting. 1 equals 1, is not the same as 1 with a space in between equals 1.
Wait, there's exactly the same thing in JavaScript.
Is that the thing here
yeah,
too?
do a 1 plus
That's the most foul thing I've
1
seen in
plus the
bash.
string of 1. That gives you 11. But you could do 1 minus the string of 1.
But that's like Java.
Gives you 0.
Okay. Okay. Okay, what the hell?
That's
I
awesome.
love this thing.
Yeah.
I love JavaScript. It's so good.
It's the most finicky
Okay,
thing
I can
ever.
take, let me try
It's
to
not
take,
that it makes sense. It's just funny.
like,
In that it doesn't make sense.
if I take a random in like this, you could, do that calculation real quick too. So that's a 0.
That dead code.
Yeah. So, like, if you wanted to have fun with this, you really could stand there for hours and try to deobfuscate everything by hand. But I'm sure, because I enabled, what's it called? I enabled self-defense. So this code has that evil shit where it probably uses itself as a decryption key. So I wouldn't want to, like, I wouldn't want to deobfuscate with this without having a copy first.
It's because, like, even if when you add a new line,
Mhm.
when you two-string it, it adds the new lines in.
I know, yeah.
And then it's just like, there you go, you're done.
Yeah, yep. So even running the beautifier, we already fucked it up. We can't restore it.
If you do find the function, and it might use multiple different functions to do it,
Mhm.
just like adds them together. But if you do find the function, you can definitely like put everything back together.
Yep. And that's one of the things with compact also, because if it uses an encryption key and it's compacted like this, like, you have 0 chance in hell of reading this and getting
I see a return. we've got it.
Oh yeah.
It's right there.
Yeah, it's right
I
there.
can see it.
It's right there.
You have zero chance in hell of reading this thing and getting the what's it called, getting anything out of it. And running the beautifier, even if all it does is add new lines, like you said, it fucks up the key. So
Wait, so the key is based off no new line, but when you actually beautify it, it adds a new line, and that actually
Yep.
ruins the key?
it adds new lines and tabs. Yep, that ruin the key.
That sounds very familiar to the IT project.
Oh really?
If you add a new line, if you read a new line.
Oh, yeah, the
lines,
hash is
it
different,
fucks
yeah.
up the hash.
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah, but the issue is half of them actually need the hash, but it actually tells you not to run it.
Mhm.
It's
Yep.
the most dumb thing I've ever seen.
Oh, this is another thing with you see the parsins here also. So this this takes the string decryption function here, it decrypts a string or whatever, gets something out of it, parses it as an int, turns it into a negative, and then divides it by 1, and then just adds it a bunch of times. And I know because I've done this before. This is going to be 1, the next one will be 2, then 3, then 4, then 5, and it just adds that all up to get some other value here, and then it checks to see if it's the correct value, and if it's not, then it shifts the whole array over, and it just does that on repeat. Which is specifically for iterating through this thing. Yeah. I mean, that's basically it for stuff that I can go through, unless you want to see me just try to do this by hand, but that might take forever. But I definitely encourage you to play around with the obfuscator. And
1400 lines.
you want me to do that?
Yeah, of course. I'm saying, that's crazy. I don't know if it was obvious, but the fact that I have cat stickers, but you know.
I just assumed you had a cat.
No.
I wish I could bring Scott. Everyone else can.
I think you can. But you can have an emoji, maybe. I think you
Oh, hell yeah.
This exists?
It does exist. Oh, you have to open folders locally though. Damn. Wait, can I not just make a new page without saving it? Like, I have no interest in saving it. I just want to play around with.
You can turn it off or say how you
Okay,
have to
so.
change.
Hell yeah.
Oh my god. Hey, it's my 12th grade coding project. Looks just like this.
Yeah.
Yo, I can read all of that.
Just as available.
That's easy. That's like a weekend.
Yeah.
Yeah, I can already determine the output. It says hello world, that's it.
We should make our password script look like this.
That was the only one.
I was gonna do that until they said no.
Yeah.
Buzzkills.
I mean, it's already by code.
I'm actually kind of surprised that it didn't go further with, like, it definitely could have encrypted these strings too. Like the ones where it calls toString or whatever.
Yeah,
You gotta give him a chance at it.
That's true.
Kind of give the ghost a chance at least.
Yeah.
Just to show them a little bit of hope before tearing it away.
Yep. Oh, and this is an example of I was talking about control flow flattening. This is like, it has a thing here that it increments, and then depending on which one it is, it does each of these. But you can see it's not just incrementing. It's actually more complicated than what I said. Like, it's not just going if 1, if 2, if 3, if 4, if 5 in terms of a number. It's actually, it uses an array here, and it's indexing strings. So it's actually like index 0 of this is probably like 4 or something. So it's like changing the order based off of the order that this array is in. And of course, this array itself is also completely obfuscated.
I know.
Yeah. Anyway, are there any questions or anything on
I'm too tired to have a question.
This is still great homework.
I don't have a question.
okay.
Stupid relational scheme that's taken me 8 years long.
Well,
Relational schemes and stuff.
I might mess around with it for a bit manually just for fun.
I'm never gonna
Oh wait,
do
oops.
that.
Oh.
You're never gonna do this. You're not gonna use this for your actual password or your.
There's also another, I don't know if you saw this, but there's also like another way of obfuscation.
Okay.
Where you set everything to a single function, a single object, and then the object key constantly calls itself, and then it will build itself. Like, it will build the entire object as it's going through the script, and then once once it starts execution, then it'll start calling itself.
Really?
But because it calls itself, it's also building other parts of itself. And then, yeah, it
So it's like recursive.
it's
Recursive cancer
object
code
building.
doesn't come back down.
It's extremely hard
Recursive
to
appending.
re-engineer because you have to engineer it in like synchronously.
Right,
If
right.
you don't, it won't.
Recursion's already hard to read when you're doing it yourself. It's so much harder to realize what someone else is doing with it.
I would just change the
Oh, hey, it's actually coming.
just do that.
You should paste all of that code in the dev thing and try to run it.
Oh, well, it won't run because of the anti-debugging checks, but
Oh, dang.
in fact, it now hangs. It freezes the site.
No, don't worry, it'll work.
No, it won't.
Rutgers gonna give you an email. Why are you trying to DDoS
I
the
love
site with
Adam's just
JavaScript?
no, it will not.
In fact, I'm not even sure it's gonna refresh now. Hopefully it refreshes. I don't want to.
It loads to a page, it's like, why?
Oh god.
Oh god.
Oh, okay, it refreshed. Good.
Whoever runs the site's probably like, yo, what's going on? 3 servers just went down. What the hell? Sir, we have one message. It says hello world. That's horrible.
I can't believe, I'm kind of surprised the automatic thing did not get rid of these double negatives. It's weird.
Did your shower ever get like clogged?
That's probably like the simplest thing is double negatives. I didn't even talk about it in the slideshow because it was like not that important. But anyway, let's reset this was true. Anyway, I wonder if there's any chat questions. I haven't checked that at all. Is Rajat here or is someone else here? Let's see. It is Rajat. Hello, Rajat.
Oh, Rajat's here.
Rajat!
Oh,
He's
chat.
there.
Hello.
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 You should send him the obfuscated code.
Yes.
As a
Oh
message.
yes.
As a message.
I love sending people.
I don't even know that it'll send, but I'll try.
This is what you should do to like.
Too long.
Oh, come on.
I'm surprised it doesn't just give you the limit and then let you send it.
Yeah. Oh well. Yeah, like a Twitter message would show you how many over you are. Be like 12,000 characters over.
Sir, we can only give you 500.
Yeah. Anyway.
What was that? Oh.
How many hours of sleep did you get?
I slept at 5 and woke up at 10.
One thing you can do with these where they take in 5 parameters but they only use a couple of them, you can like just delete the parameters after the last one you used and it won't break anything. Like in this one, for example, if you just delete the last parameter, you don't have to modify the places where it's called with and it won't break.
What do you
Wonderful.
Actually, I'm not sure about that. Passing in extra parameters might cause it to not work, but if I know, because I saw before with some other obfuscated code, if you call a function and you put in less parameters than necessary to call it, but it doesn't use all of the parameters, then it won't crash, which is weird. But
It's so weird, yeah, calling in more than you need, then just be like, I used 2.
yeah, JavaScript is a fucking weird language. It really is.
No wonder Mo loves it.
I use it like once a week. And Kayla's like, I can smell it.
Like, I'm curious how often these are even used. Like, you, for example, you're used 3 times. Uh-huh. Interesting. Yeah, so it seems like the only place that's even used is for that one line.
Jesus Christ.
Oh yeah, that's just your string array. Okay. So,
What are you trying to do? Find a pattern?
no, I'm just trying to think of the fastest way to deobfuscate it. I mean, the fastest way is just to let the automatic one do it, but
I'm gonna do it the manual way.
yeah, if I wanted to do it manually, it would be like so that's something passed in. That's also something passed in. Huh. Oh yeah, that's one thing I can undo. You can see like the value here. It's only used twice, and so it's actually just this because it's passed in. So I can just change it to be that constant, and then same thing with that. It's only used once, so I can just replace it with this. Oops. Yeah. See, that's one of the weird things in JavaScript too. You can set a variable equal to a function name, and then just call that variable with parentheses, and it would be like calling the other function. It's literally an alias. It's like, because you can't do that in Java or C. Forgot to say something. Oh, fun fact, in C, passing too many args to a function is undefined behavior instead of just being an error, and as far as I know, still only generates warning and ignores extra params. You do that in Java and C. Oh, really? Oh wait, would it be like a void pointer or something? Or are you still talking about the other thing? Like, what type would you make it if you made a function alias? Yeah, I know function pointers, but the syntax is very different.
Yeah. I'm actually, despite how weird JavaScript is, I'm very happy that the pointing for the function name is very simple. You put a parenthesis around it. It's like, okay.
Yeah. Okay, functional phrases. I remember those from what was it, SoftMath? Okay, so now that we know that this runs itself, I can actually just delete the entire function wrapper entirely because I already passed in the parameters. So then I can just shift tab everything back, and so that simplified some stuff.
It's so weird because
I don't think there's much else I can do except for getting rid of all these ints and then replacing these, which takes forever. But
have you ever done nothing? Being bored. Be bored.
let me,
Yeah. Well,
yeah, that's a 1.
sometimes you do have to be bored. It's like
But it'll take forever if I do that by hand. Keyboard.
I usually so what I do be bored.
2. Yeah, it's just gonna count up with each one, so I'll just do which that would be a nice trick also if this was not done by a machine. If you did 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 12. You know what I mean? Because the reverse engineer would just assume that it's counting up each one, and then eventually they get somewhere where it doesn't, unless they automate it, of course. But yeah.
User placement.
Oh god. What was it? 2, 3. Oh, yeah, it was right here. Oh, what? What the hell? Yeah, this is awful. Yeah, I can definitely understand Liz's opinion. She was saying earlier when I was showing her some of my slides as I was working on them, she said that you could not pay her 7 figures to do this.
I think you could pay me that.
Yeah, you could definitely pay me 7 figures.
I mean, is that an offer?
Those things, yeah.
I think I would do it.
Part of it. When you're stressed out, one way to cope with it. Associate.
Yeah, I mean, it's not the worst job ever, yeah.
I mean, 7 figures. There's not a lot I wouldn't do. So it's not a thing where it's say, what would you do? It's more like, what would you not do?
You're in a conversation explaining the things you would not ever do, and then someone's like, so if you got 7 figures, you're like, okay, so the things I would
Like, all of
100% do for 7 figures.
Like, a lot of those things disappear once you put 7 figures in. A lot of the things I wouldn't do are suddenly not there.
I said I wasn't gonna do those things. I mean, once you said 7 figures,
I mean,
never said that.
a lot
actually.
of those, I mean, actually, no. Actually, maybe I would.
Yeah. Okay, so the next one is 6. wish this cursor moved faster. I'm definitely not going to finish deobfuscating this today anyway, but just to give an idea, I want to try to do like one function at least.
We could use.
What?
We could use B and W to move left and right
Oh.
faster.
God, wow.
It actually would be faster. That is the use case.
That is true.
Wonderful.
Once I give you an example, of course. you
No,
wanna see me.
instead, I think what you should do, I think you should do Q exclamation point, get the hell out of him.
You know how to get out of it. You're a professional.
Just like use Vim. Use Vim.
I do wonder what algorithm
literally
they
everything.
use to. I wonder what algorithm they use to generate these factors like that.
They use random.
Yeah, I know, but it's not completely random because it has to add up to the correct value at the end. Like, I'm guessing the first value is random, but then they have to calculate something that adds up to 10.
Kind of an interesting algorithm.
Yeah. Okay, there we go. Awesome. So, well, that line's a little easier to read at least. So now all we have left is these functions, which are a nightmare. I was intentionally avoiding these, but okay. So let me find the 3. Yeah. So you can see, I think I mentioned the last one and then the second to last. So the first 3 parameters of this are useless, and we can delete them. So that means all of these numbers, every time it's called, are useless. So just like that, we simplified it a bit. And then you can also see the parameters are actually reversed from how they're passed into the function it wraps. So actually, this should be like this. Okay. So then that means, of course, I got to reverse them down here too. See, don't miss your train. Oh fuck. Oops. Bye. Thank you.
We're gonna fuck you guys up.
I don't believe it.
When he said good luck, I was like, wait, is he not gonna do
Wait
it?
a minute.
Okay, so then
Especially you.
Yes, of course. 0.5. To do highest one? I don't know, like half of one. It's not much to it.
okay.
You do like 3 things, run a script, and go back to bed.
So now, now that I've reduced the number of parameters and I reordered them correctly, and that's the only 2 uses of it, I can now actually replace this with the thing that it wraps. The only thing I have to do is add the offset like this to both. And then I can now replace the function call with the one that it was a wrapper of. Yeah, so now I can just delete this function entirely because it's useless. And so now for each of these 4 functions, I'm going to have to do that.
The same thing.
Yep. But also now I can simplify some stuff again with JS console. So that's actually 825. Although the thing is, I like keeping them as hex values. I wish there was a way to print this out as a hex.
He's going insane by trying to keep the hex values.
Is it?
I must have this hex.
It's like, I'm actually
Hex.
enjoying looking at these hex
Plus
values.
339.
Adam's brain thinks in hex. Probably.
That sounds oddly cool, I'm not gonna lie.
Maybe,
He
yeah.
thinks in hex.
Yes, I think in base 16 at all times.
Honestly, forget VS Code can be used in a browser. I'm not gonna lie.
I didn't even know that existed in the first place.
I do.
Honestly, I didn't know it existed either until I looked it up.
What the hell?
Yeah, but yeah, I just accidentally found it.
Yes, I knew first.
I accidentally typed the URL in perfectly.
Okay, so there we go. So now we've simplified 2 function calls in this thing.
Because I found out on an unsupported device.
It's funny too.
Yeah, like I couldn't download VS Code, and then I just learned that there was an online version.
Okay, so this one's actually more annoying than the other one because the other one had the first 3 were useless, but this one it's the first 2 and the last one. So I actually have to delete stuff from both sides. At least I don't have to reverse them this time. But let me find again. Oh, it's used 4 times this time. Okay, so delete first 2 and the last one. Oops. Okay. delete the first two and the last one. Whoa. Okay. Oh, Rajat left.
No!
No.
We lost
Oh well.
We lost a real one.
Oh well.
He moved on so quickly.
Well, the bulk of the slides are over already. It's
He
just
decided to deobfuscate the code himself.
Oh yes.
He'll be back with it. in a
Yeah, he
few
comes
hours.
back in like 5 minutes, like, anyway, guys.
Hey guys, by the way, it prints out hello world. I don't know if you noticed.
Yeah. Okay, I'm not gonna manually do the
What?
adding anymore until I finish the
Or
rest
is
of
it
these.
really
So.
I couldn't tell if this is talking about my Mac.
No,
or
no,
just-
no, Adam.
There are two
What?
Macs, yeah?
What do you say, Liz? It's a Mac.
What's its MAC address?
Next, so.
Forever, it's the
That's
next
like-
user's opinion.
I was like, it's really weird for you to suddenly get offended by my Mac now of all times.
No, 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 not
Despite the
yours.
fact it's not even running Mac OS.
Yeah.
No, not yours. I'm talking on the predictor.
Yeah.
What's wrong with the one on the protector, Liz?
Max sense.
Oh,
They're made to be simple. They're simple people.
yes.
I don't like simple people.
Just like,
What the hell?
They were going to
Wow.
complexity in the
Bro,
world.
bro said you cannot ever be simple.
That's
You
some dictator talking. What the hell?
yeah.
You have to be complex and
That's like
upset.
the world should constrain to my beliefs. What's crazy?
There's so
Actually, you know what? I will do this.
Of course.
Liz, what do you think of the presentation?
Huh?
What do you think of the presentation?
Are we
I
still
was
recording?
filling out tickets.
Oh, the whole time?
Nearly, yeah.
Damn.
Do you know how many tickets I had to fill out?
No.
The Wednesday, Thursday,
Oh.
today. I had 9 people come in today.
God damn, that's impressive.
I handled all 9.
Nice.
We're talking about the cave.
Mm-hmm.
Plus, I had to handle Michael asking stupid
Help.
questions.
Are these CS111 kids?
Most of them, I'm assuming. You know what's interesting? These are all multiples of 20.
Are we still recording?
I am, yeah.
Or
I could
actually-
probably stop.
Our hashing algorithm is actually just times 20 times n. However many multiples of 20
Actually,
we add
you know-
before they notice something.
I'll let future viewers see me try to deobfuscate this one function, and then I'll stop. But
I just need to stand up.
the bulk of it is over, though, so if you're watching and you don't want to sit around for like another hour while I finish this, then you don't have to.
So that's crazy. Adam's talking to the future people. He's breaking the fourth wall.
I love doing that. If I'm recording anything, just talk to whoever it may possibly that one guy skip to this 1 second.
Mm-hmm.
That's what I did. I added like a funny thing to my end of internship like performance review kind of. I had to like because I was working with a team and I had to make a call and then record that also to like do a knowledge transfer of all the stuff I made. And at the end, like right at the end when everyone else left the call and it's just me, I had to press stop record. I was like, oh by the way, if you're still listening, I just said by the way, if you're still listening, the code is 1, 2, 3, 4. Doesn't go to anything. That's nothing. I just said that just in case someone knows.
Someone got activated.
I don't even know if anyone's ever gonna see it, but it's there.
The first two, and then
It's
that
there,
one
and
also.
whatever my code is got pushed to production, so someone could see it.
That's hilarious.
I have production code in their database, so I don't know if they're gonna notice.
That's cool.
It's funny as hell.
That's cool and really funny that that even exists now.
Yeah.
Someone
Yeah.
does the activation.
Somewhere in there, in the 1.5 million lines of database code, there is something saying that.
So that was just used
I'll
once.
do
So.
that.
Oh wait, fuck. Oops.
Adam's almost done with function 2.
That's what I
Function
should've
3
done
actually.
For my internship, when I coded my
So what-
program, I should have obfuscated it. That would have been funny.
When you so how do you know when you're close to actually done?
With this,
Oh my god.
793.
I heard someone snap their neck. That was crazy.
I mean, I don't see any
That's
dead people.
319.
Was that actually your neck?
Yes.
Oh my god. I didn't think.
Makes me immediately answer.
Okay, man, that's not too right. That was like.
Wait, so Kareem, what was your
snapping
question?
a ruler.
Oh, I was saying, how do you know when, is it when we're done with these functions that you know
Yeah.
that you're closer, that you're
Yeah,
actually
well,
like-
I would be close to being done
Yeah,
with
snap,
this
you know, when you
once
go
I'm
back
just
to-
down to the parsons, because you see how it's like all 172D now? That's gonna, everything's gonna boil down to that at the end. And
I heard like
172D is
It was like 7.
later on
Like-
somewhere. Like that is the main That is the main. Oh wait, it's right here.
Oh,
This is 172D on the screen right now. So this is the decryption function, and in fact, you can even see this right here. This is like a common symbol table for base 64. So it's probably base 64 encoding actually, and this is probably decoding for it. But
has he even started it?
we would have to deobfuscate this function in order to actually get how it's decrypting and stuff, and then we could go back and decrypt everything else, and then we'd have the parsons done up top. But like, I can get about 80% of the way there through everything I'm doing right now, just to clean up what this code here actually does. So on this one, I think all three of the middle ones are. But we're not going to get through that middle one. There's no time. But you think I can do it?
Definitely, we believe in you.
I thought you were gonna go like the little bully route here, like, what are you chicken? You're not gonna do
No,
it.
I was very, very uplifting and saying we believe in you, and then we just leave the room and leave it to and like, you know, if he just doesn't look up, they won't notice that we're gone. And then come like 3 days later, he's like, guys, I did it, and we're just not.
Yeah. Some of the early malware analysis workshops last year, I didn't realize. I was trying to not do what Philip had done the previous year, which was go straight into Ghidra/IDAPRO and be really complicated and turn everyone off with assembly. So what I tried to do was start simple with JavaScript, and I was like, oh, we can do JavaScript deobfuscation. So I picked a script that looked similar to this, and then I spent like 4 weeks trying to deobfuscate it, and it was completely unable.
Oh my god.
And then, yeah, Colin remembers that.
See, I never went to the old, back when they split the workshops.
Yeah.
I always got those messages because I signed up for the pen testing ones because
Mm.
that's what I was into. And they always send messages, oh, it's coming out. And I look at my schedule and there's a class there.
Yeah.
And I was
Honestly,
like,
you
well,
did.
guess I'm not going.
Well, Rajat's pen testing workshops were pretty good, I think. I went to those
Who's Rajat?
2 years ago, but the malware analysis ones that I did honestly were not that good, so you didn't really miss much.
I just still have like one of the old VirtualBox images for malware analysis. Just
Oh,
here.
one of Philip's, yeah.
Yes. And then I never did anything with it.
Those are actually useful, if only for the
That's awesome.
carded copies of IDAPRO,
I don't want
which are difficult to.
So if you want to get people into reverse engineering,
Mm-hmm.
you have to get them into it the way I got myself into it, which is show them, just start up Ghidra. And they'll be like, wow, I want to use this now.
Yeah.
That's actually how I actually devoted time to learning it.
Mm.
Because I started it up, saw the cool logo, and I was like, I'm gonna learn how to use this. Because I want to see this cool logo every time.
Yeah.
That's literally the only reason I even tried.
Yep. Philip sold the VMs used IDA instead of Ghidra because I don't think actually Ghidra existed yet when he first made them, and then he just kept them around. But,
It wasn't leaked yet.
well, actually, it leaked in 2017, but Ghidra did.
Now it's
but
on. Now it's on actually the NSA GitHub.
Yeah.
I always thought that was funny going to the GitHub, just straight up the National Security Agency.
Mm-hmm. Well, I mean, once it was out there anyway, it was like, what's the harm in keeping it? And also, one of the main reasons for publishing it, they said that like in their official statement, they said that most cybersecurity employees that they hire are dog shit and don't know what they're doing. And so they released Ghidra because they want people to get more exposure to cybersecurity so that when they hire people, they actually hire competent people.
And then every single CTF sees its reverse engineering scores go all the way up to 100.
Yeah. Still though, I've noticed like at some of the CTFs that I've done, like usually I only touch the reverse engineering category and then maybe I'd touch one or two others, individual ones if they're easy. But the reverse engineering category at a lot of the CTFs that I've done was like the least touched category. I was one of the only people who did them.
They just all hate looking at it.
Reverse engineering hard. Reverse engineering difficult. I can't do reverse. I can only go forward.
Can't switch your gears. I think you need to get that transmission fixed.
Only
That'll be
forward.
$3,000, please.
Full power forward all the time.
That's scripting. I do scripting on CTFs as well as web stuff.
I wish I knew how to write the script.
Offensive.
I never wrote the script before.
So that was the most fun thing I learned in my certification. After it was all just like
For one thing,
forensics and offensive.
just to get it from
Which is why I
Yeah, I'm hoping we can get that Bixby's uncle to come back again, the red teammate.
yeah.
He was really cool. And it would be cool also, Ray
Insert.
was our old vice president. She works at Microsoft as a red teamer now too.
Oh, wow.
Back to the metadata.
Yeah, she said she'd be interested in coming back sometime next semester maybe.
Like next semester, I want to do.
Okay, so we're almost. Whoa.
I think you should take it. It's very fun.
What? What? Whoa.
What happens?
I don't know. I'm saying Control Z and it's not Command Zing. What is going on? Why is it deleting? What the hell? Is there an undo?
You might have to just do edit, yeah.
I'm saying undo. Hello. God damn it.
Also, if that helps.
What the fuck? I'm saying undo. Oh, okay.
That's the summation stuff, right?
Okay, you know what?
No, the opposite way.
No, I
No, I said that part.
Obfuscation.
Okay, what are we at now? That's fine
I
though.
didn't sign up for all the summation before.
As long as we're not completely fucked up.
What? It was like, I need 9 slides in a row full of summations. Come on.
No. He gave you the proof. That's not the
Oh my god, he gave us the proof. That's the stupidest thing ever.
I
Can you
know.
not? Can you not?
I have my
Want
notes.
the proof.
I have
Okay,
my notes
what's the
from
proof?
operations management. We did all of the key theory, and it was already there. So I am very familiar with it. It is not that bad.
9:38.
No one did that in the project. It's totally fun.
Has like, here are the equations. You want me to lambda, and here's how you figure each one. Slam it all on the big one. You're done. That's the answer. Rinse and repeat for every single setting, and they have to give you the Q type. They have to give you lambda. That's it. All the time. You're done.
Okay.
He made it way worse than it actually is.
That sounds like a recipe for a bad teacher. Making easy topic really hard.
Yeah. He's like, I quoted. He was like, so the reason I do that in Ruby, yeah, because they you did not explain why to a certain degree, why you need to a certain degree. You just put the Ruby aside and said,
Ha ha ha,
You say that,
equal.
you say that.
yes, I can, I can.
Haha, equal.
No quotes.
Oh, yes, I was writing quotes.
Oh yeah, she discorded it to me like 2 seconds after you said it.
Computer security with the hardware.
Yeah, no context. Haha, equal, and you're like, what the
Yeah,
fuck?
you need IT or OS. I'm in IT and everything, so
I'm doing IT and OS.
I'm hoping to skip OS so I don't have to take it. But I
OS
also-
is actually my favorite class right now.
I've been hearing that OS is fun from some
I'll
people.
probably do OS along with it. I'll go with OS first year and then
This
F4.
skips a ton of steps, so I guess we just skip it.
Of course, you
What the fuck?
Go back
That's
to
the fact
talk
you've
and
gotten
do
that far.
minutes.
What minutes so far?
That's what he said, I quoted him, he's like,
Oh,
he,
I thought that was in response to
he
that.
did not make the slide, so he clicked the next and he was like,
Okay.
we
There
do
we
a
go.
couple of
Is it
example
not a problem that we
questions, I
accidentally
guess.
deleted some of the code?
No, I undid them off and it came back somehow. I don't know how that happened, but whatever. Anyway, so this is mostly deobfuscated now. It's obviously we still have to get that decryption function working to fully get the value, but
So it has to be equal.
I'm gonna guess that this value should equal that, and then once it equals that, that's when the loop breaks. So it's this value will equal that eventually, and it's just the number. What we would need to know is the number of shifts that it does before it equals that, which we can't know without running it. But okay. Oh, another thing we could do, like this function right here. Actually, you can see. Oh, that's another thing that you can do in JavaScript. You can call things before they're declared. So like this is an alias to a function that doesn't exist yet because it's declared down here.
Service time equals arrival time.
But yeah, so I could. Yeah, so it sets itself equal to a function, and then it returns itself. But since all this function does is just return this anyway, that means that this function is actually an alias for this, and then this function is an alias for this function, which is named the same and is an alias for this. So in other words, I could just completely replace this function with this. So, and for one thing, I could just delete this entirely, and then
Well, we didn't, but I didn't.
oh, that's used. Oh my god, that's used 33 times. Do you see that shit? There's no way I'm doing that by hand.
Oh my god. Why?
You're going.
Nice.
Why are there so many?
Nice.
Fuck, that's awful.
Obfuscation.
I'm curious, like, where some of these are even used, like GMTYV. Where is that used? It's never used. Look at that. There's an entire function that's never used.
Delete.
Well, actually, you know what? I can't even say that because maybe that's one of the encrypted strings in that string table. I have no way of knowing. What if the encrypted string decrypts to this, which then calls this function?
Yeah, maybe I will not.
It's possible, though. You can't say it's not plausible. Hmm. God, this code is actually awful. It's the worst thing I've ever seen. Oh yeah, I can tell you this is probably 0, just because it's the beginning of a for loop. But let me check for sure. It's 0.
Yes,
yeah.
sir. That's a 0.
Which means that this is probably also 0.
Like she was like, I don't know what the fuck is
Mhm.
going on. She walked into class and she's like, why are you debating? What is this? She
That's also 0.
Wait, you quit what class?
Oh, thank you.
Wait, are you still recording?
Yeah.
Alright.
Oh yeah, I can probably stop
Alright,
fucking
someone
recording
clip the
now.
recording of him sneezing and just play it in Discord.
Oh.
Make it a Discord.
Make it a Discord soundboard thing.
Why you thought
You will debate the whole.
Alright, yeah, I'm done with the recording now, I think.
I like to assume they're correct.
I like to just know I'm right. I don't even check.
The rules of math.
Abstract algebra will
Okay, yeah, so that's the presentation.
What math do you have against